We are winning hundreds of thousands of dollars from fantasy football, and that takes investing thousands of dollars first. So this is our financial recap, year 2 overview. I've been itching to get ready to start drafting for 2026. So this is the 2025 financial recap. See how much we invested and how much it paid out. And every year, we give our winnings back to the people. So we'll talk about how you can win our giveaway at the end of the video. Let's take a step back and let's look at how this fantasy season turned out this year. 2025 was an interesting fantasy season, to say the least. It was some of the lowest scoring. A lot of the leagues I run, I give 2 awards, one of which being the highest scorer of the year. Oftentimes, not always, somebody puts up over 200. And in our leagues, we didn't even see much 180s this year, if any, which is a little more common practice. So with that and a handful of learning, let's look at the numbers. So our fantasy funds are broken down into 3 main categories: our best ball drafts, our redrafts, and our dynasties. So in best ball, after our year 1, we started with $468 in the account. Throughout the season, we added 1,056, 100 of which were sponsored dollars. And before we get to what that turned out into, our redrafts added another $70 to our total funds, as well as our dynasties added another $70. So between all of our fantasy leagues for year 2, we took a big jump up from year 1, almost 3xing our investment with a grand total of $1,664 on Fantasy Destined year 2. Now, did the profits pay out the same 3x? Let's go to the numbers. Now, to not tug your balls too much, we didn't have our best fantasy season. It wasn't like we produced a bunch of teams that just went and dominated. Besides our free league that won, all of our teams got K'd out in the semis. So you're not gonna be in the green if you're not sending teams to the finals, let alone winning them. Of our dynasties, neither of them won any money back. Three-Headed Dragon, we won year 1 and had some moves we talked about making, and honestly just let it stay stagnant, not winning any money. We'll have other videos going over what we're doing with that team from here. And worthy of a chip, last year went 3-11, this year went 5-9. So we're just getting our pieces as we put that roster together. Again, we'll have other videos going over those teams, roster construction, and the draft picks we got coming up and how we see ourselves spending them. But for Fantasy Destined, year 2, neither team is winning any money. So unless you want your dynasties just taking money out of your pot, we're gonna have to turn those around. Of our redrafts, 1 of the 4 was a guillotine league, so the worst team gets cut every week. I had that written in the cards to win. So when we got top 3, we only got $30 back, and that was the only one of our redraft teams that won us any money back. Our other 3 teams went 7-7, lost in the playoffs, 8-6, lost in the playoffs, and 2-12. All for learning. Everything is destiny. You don't just get to do astronomical shit without going through the trenches to learn how to be astronomical. As a man who wins hundreds of thousands of dollars from fantasy football, the physical reality has to reflect in the very things that create the principles of that man. Now, where the bulk of the funds came from, best ball, 1,524, that dwindled its way to 276.30. Which is what the account's left with heading into Fantasy Destined year 3. And if we want to continue this shit, we're gonna have to fucking pick up the pace. We're not gonna be able to just fuck around with all these teams when those aren't even the teams getting us in. So how many total teams did we draft in best ball this year? Year 1, we drafted 42 teams, sent 5 to round 2, and none of those went on to round 3 or 4. Step 1 had to be send our first teams to round 3. We increased our probability by drafting 174 total teams in 2025. Of those 174, our advancement rate dropped from year 1. Year 1, we had a 12% advancement rate, sending 5 of those 42 teams to round 2. Year 2, that 12% dropped to 8.6%. So the first standard is we have to be over 10% advancement rate every year. And I go as far as to say if we're under 6.7% advancement rate next year, that could be the end of Fantasy Destined. And we know what this is. We're the most impactful fantasy brands. And so to bring that to light, we simply have to step it up. We're not going to be fucking around in as many of these drafts next year. This was year 2. It's 2.5 years for mastery. We're officially in year 3. At this point, there are no excuses. We know the platform. We said this shit last year in the financial recap, year 1 overview. It's no longer about the shit I have to say. We just have to keep taking the next steps. Last year, we sent no teams to round 3. The next step was send your first team to round 3. This this year. Like I said, we drafted a lot more teams. We sent 3x as many teams to round 2 to at least increase our probability. And we sent 6 teams to round 3. Of those round 3 teams, none of them made it to the final round. That's where your big money is won. So the next step is sending our first team to the final round. And honestly, bro, that's the whole reason I started this shit to begin with. It's one thing to know. It's another thing to do what you know. And for all these years, I've been knowing this fantasy shit, which players, listening to other people. So this is just my journey evolving from just knowing to doing what we know. That's why we say we're training our consciousness through fantasy football. Now everybody's asking, Fantasy Destined, Fantasy Destined. If you lost money in fantasy, how are you gonna do the giveaway? Let's just add as a side note, we also sent out $348 of sponsored drafts last year. 88 to last year's giveaway, and then just a handful of friends, Fantasy Destined birthday presents. Yeah, Fantasy Destined year 2 giveaway, we might not have profits to give, but oh boy do we have value. We gave away $1,000 of value last year, and more of that came from the things outside of our profits anyways. So we're still gonna be giving away our draft rankings and one free draft consultation call with Fantasy Destined. So you can use that on a best ball draft, or since we're not going to be giving you the funds to use for that, you can use that on one of your league drafts that you already are going to have. For everyone who's already entered into the giveaway, you don't have to do anything. You're going to be entered every year. If you haven't entered the giveaway, there's a few videos explaining it around the channel, and it's just most important to pay attention to Fantasy Destined on Instagram. That's where the entry portal is, essentially. Oh, speaking of that, what is Fantasy Destined stock after the year 2 plummet? Oh my god, chat, DSTN stock dropped 33%? Nah, I gotta invest right now. If any of y'all know stocks, this is literally the time. Yo, I can't waste any more time. I gotta go to Fantasy Destined's Instagram and go invest for this giveaway. I'm getting in. I gotta win this giveaway. And even if it's not this one, they about to have 100K of winnings to give away. All right, whenever that comes, I'll be the winner.